Hello, BookTube. And welcome to your Daily Penguin, our march through my Penguin classics, book by book and author by author. And once upon a time, I might have said era by era, but we had a chronological whiplash yesterday where we went from the early years of the Renaissance, which we're using the signpost year of 1492 because we looked at the voyages of Christopher Columbus and because everybody knows that date, whether they know anything else. And I mentioned during that Columbus video that 1492 is Columbus looking for the New World, and he undertook that voyage for Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, and they were the parents of Henry VIII's first wife. So that slots you directly into the chronological sequence, a time period, even if you're not good with dates. You now know a date. 1492 means Henry VIII. It means you're near enough to Henry VIII so that you're talking about the parents of his first wife. And then we snapped back 1,500 years to Marcus Aurelius and the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, his philosophical handbook about all the stuff that he can be philosophical about. And I ranted a bit. I admit I lost my composure a bit and ranted about bro philosophy, and have been and am still receiving pushback from bro philosophy fans. And I sympathize. I really do. I really sympathize. If you have been shaped or marred or both by this weird worldview, then hearing someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight, someone who's just talking about books, but who has done a fair amount of living, you hear someone go at it with hammer and pitons, it's naturally going to be uncomfortable. My strong suggestion to you dude bros out there would be to take a long moment of quiet reflection and then dump it all. Just dump all of it. Dump all the bro philosophy, dump the bro science, dump the bro workout routine, dump the bro dating advice, dump it all. Just dump it all. just dump it all. And I know that will leave you feeling de-scalloped and vulnerable, and maybe that's a good thing for you. But one way or another, that feeling is easy to correct. All you need to do is start doing new and vigorous reading in the real world from writers who are writing about real things. All you need to do is, for a minute, think outside the herd. The herd that is encouraged by bro anything. Think outside the herd and ask yourself, well, okay, what do I actually like? What do I actually like? And then read about that. That sort of thing. Those of you dude bros who are a little older, perhaps spend some time with younger people. Those of you who are very young, especially dude bros in your 20s, perhaps spend some time with women you do not plan to bed. Women that you will not, under any circumstances, bed. So that there's so that you're removing the stoic, self-absorbed motive for spending time with them in the first place. Perhaps do that. But one way or another, though, we had a talk about stoicism and navel gazing and dude bro philosophy, and that maybe looked like we were settled right into the rut of the 5th century again. We were going to go right back to the ancient world, but no, no, we are whiplashing straight back in time again. And I don't know how long this is going to continue. I think this is going to be the pattern for your Daily Penguin for the rest of 2020. Once we're out of this first bookcase, any notion, I think, of chronological sorting ends. Author sorting maybe continues, but chronological sorting, I think it mostly ends after this bookcase. And so that chaos was coming anyway, but I've been looking around, looking specifically at that first bookcase, the one right over my shoulder, trying to see what I have missed, and maybe are there things that I just overlooked. Well, we're snapping back. And curiously enough, the signpost date is still 1492. Because that is the date that our current Daily Penguin author was born, and that is this author, Pietro Aretino. That is his picture. For once, this is not a grainy Roman fresco or a dumb medieval Roman tapestry, and for once, this cover is not. The Penguin Classic cover is just not some editor's approximation of what might or might not be germane to the subject of the book. Aretino was friends with the painter Titian, who painted him. That is what our author looked like, by one of the greatest painters in the history of mankind. So, so not a bad cover for this is an odd little Penguin classic of his selected letters. And I say odd because Aretino wrote his whole life. He was had a very, very colorful life. Very, very colorful. He knew everybody. We talked the other day about the standard historical fiction gimmick from the era of John Jakes and the Bastard and the Kent Family Chronicles. We talked about the standard historical gimmick of inventing a character who would then, just by random chance, be everywhere important at crucial moments, meet every important or famous person, all in their one lifetime, all just incident after incident. When real life doesn't tend to work that way, and Aretino was that. That was the life that he lived. He knew everybody. Princes, condottieri, popes, kings, all the greatest writers, all the greatest painters, all the greatest sculptors of his day, and fell into and out of productive relationships with most of them. He was, for instance, he found it advisable to quit the city of Rome as fast as possible under the papacy of Leo X, which was... I mean, I know the Renaissance is a dicey time just to begin with, but you had to do quite a bit. You had to work the extra hours to get banished from Leo X's Rome, and he did. He managed to do it. And fetched up eventually in Venice, where he spent the latter half of his life. And sensed, I don't know that I have read every word that this author has written. He's written quite a bit, and a lot of it has been suppressed for a long time, which we'll get to. But I think I've read 99% of it, 95% of it, and even so, I'm not 100% sure. This is a Renaissance author I don't know backwards and forwards, the way I know a lot of them, including a lot of them whose names have faded into obscurity. But I don't think Aretino ever, in his voluminous writings, actually nudges close to saying that the reason why he stayed in Venice is because it seemed like his kind of place, or the Renaissance equivalent of that term. But nevertheless, that's exactly what he found in Venice. He found his kind of place. He found a city, an attitude, a group of people, a reigning ethos that fit in well with his life and with his own ethos. And that, that brings us to what that ethos was. That is not an easy subject. Because Aretino, he does not raise for us the standard question that we've been asking about the vagaries of translation. His Italian is fairly straightforward. And he does not raise for us the other question that we've been raising, which is the pitiless ratio, because he wrote voluminously. Even if a large amount of what he wrote was lost to the vagaries of time, we would still have a large amount of it. Now, he raises another question, a question that is also going to come up in the course of your Daily Penguin, and that comes up in the study of literature and the reading of literature just in general, even in the present day with authors who are on Twitter. And that is drawing the distinction, drawing a gulf between the nature of the writer, what the writer is like, and the worth of the work. Because we have dealt in the past with writers in our Penguin series who were themselves pieces of work. And we've just had to acknowledge that and read their work anyway. Now, you all know where I stand, which is exactly what I just said. Regardless of what the author is, you don't cancel them and you don't stop reading their work. The work is separate from the author. Completely separate from the author. It's completely separate from them. In other words, once they put it out into the world, once they are Horace waving goodbye to their little book and sending it out into the world, they're just another reader. I couldn't care less what J.K. Rowling says about any of her characters and what she says about her characters, unless it's in the book. It's just another person's opinion. I couldn't care less whether she thinks Dumbledore was gay. I say he wasn't. My opinion is absolutely every bit as valid as hers, unless it's in her book. But she doesn't own those characters afterwards. She can't say, oh yeah, I just rolled out of bed, I had some bonbons, and then when my maid left the room, because of course she fed them to me, you don't expect me to eat my own bonbons, do you? Good Lord, you peasants. But once I was done and the maid had left the room, I just decided that Dumbledore's gay, LOL, and go on Twitter and say that. Yeah, good luck. You might have hordes and hordes of Potter fans hoping that they can build, that they now have a validation for their fan fiction. But as far as I'm concerned, once the writer's book is ours, it's no longer theirs. It becomes just another work, and they become just another reader. And if that is true, I certainly do believe that. And if I believe that, then I have to, as a corollary to that, I have to believe that what the author was like in real life is largely immaterial to the work. It might inform what's on the page, but it doesn't exonerate or excuse or damn what's on the page. And that's lucky in Aretino's case, because he was, again, a piece of work. He was a backstabber, uh, a man of poor faith. He could make a very good friend, but he was hoarding your secrets no matter what. If you are a Titian and you go over to his house to have wine and philosophical discussion into the wee small hours, he's remembering everything and he's writing it all down. and he's not above using that against you. He had charges for bribery and extortion brought against him in many different courts of law. They were all factually grounded. And even if you didn't do that, he had, to almost the end of his days, he had people paying him stipends for no discoverable reason other than hush money. That's all that it could be, because he wasn't doing them any services whatsoever, and he wasn't particularly nice. So you wouldn't just agree to do that the way some people did for Leonardo da Vinci. He was not the kind of person that you would want to meet, not the kind of person you would probably want to know. He would have been a 12-hour-a-day denizen of Twitter had he lived today. And you just have to discard that. Most people don't know anything about this author anyway. I would be willing to bet that a lot of people, even people who like the Italian Renaissance, don't know this author anymore. He has largely gone. He's largely gone from the reading, what we might loosely call the reading collective consciousness. Penguin decided to do a volume of his selected letters. I don't think Penguin has ever done selected dialogues. He also did dramatic dialogues, much in the nature of the Dutch humanist Erasmus. And another publisher did a very nice mass-market paperback of those dialogues, but I don't think Penguin ever did, at least not in America. But there's a reason, I think, there's a reason why Aretino's reputation has suffered so much that in the late 20th century, from the 1980s on, when Puritanism came back in full force, and Puritanism then went away for a bit, and now has come back roaringly. Puritanism has embraced social media and vice versa, to the point where we are living, in America anyway, but also I would say in the UK, we are living in one of the most puritanical ages since the Puritans invented the whole thing, since they got the whole ball rolling. The whole idea of hashtag own voices is censorship. The whole idea of cancel culture is censorship. That we live in an era where censorship and puritanical judgment has just run rampant. Absolutely, it's absolutely rampant. Where there are cadres of people out there, vast numbers of them out in the world, who think that the fact that you have an opinion that's different from any of theirs is sufficient grounds for organizing your destruction. That is just unbelievable. And that there are many, many errors, even in a puritanical history like America. There have been many, many errors in American history where even the most puritanical person in the country would have said, oh, that's way too much. But I believe that goes hand in hand with one of the reasons why why publishers aren't lining up to celebrate this author, and that's because he wrote a lot of porn. He wrote an enormous amount of porn, an enormous amount of it, and was enthusiastic about a debased and squalid life. He was the anti-Stoic. It's a little bit odd that the rampant identitarian politics of the 21st century hasn't found this author and raised him up and embraced him, especially since he checked many boxes for identitarianism. Many boxes. It doesn't do anything to validate the worth of his work. Most of that huge body of work that has survived the pitiless ratio is rather bad. Most of it is rather bad. I think you can tell, oddly enough, which of his works is probably literarily better than others, and you can tell it by the attention that he gave to it. Aretino knew perfectly well when he was churning out garbage and when he was writing something good. For instance, he made a big deal out of his letters in his lifetime. A big deal out of them. Worked hard on them, collected them, collated them, paid money to have them copied, and then welched on the payment. But it doesn't matter. He still had it done. He paid attention to these letters, and there was a good reason for that, because they make fantastic reading. This is George Bull, who we've already seen for Penguin translations, and we will see again. He's done a large number of translations, and his translations are really, really serviceable. They really are. His Aretino comes off the page, definitely. A lot of these letters are to heads of state or people that could do him a favor. So there's a lot. Any of you would be familiar with Renaissance letters. You'll know what I'm going to say here. You'll know to anticipate. There's a lot of the throat clearing fawning and oh, your grace, and oh, the serenity of your wisdom, and all that sort of stuff. And that gets a little bit wearying. The more you read of it, the more wearying it gets. It's never sincere, and you know that, and so did the recipient. So you get a lot of that in this volume. But this volume also contains a lot of him writing to friends. And there's lots of just sparks of tossed off wisdom, lots and lots of observations about the events of the day. If anything, I think this volume is under annotated. You could do a letters volume, Aretino's letters. You could do a volume that was 10 times the size, and you could certainly flood it with more and more annotation. You could certainly do that. What a volume you could do of his letters, and maybe that would be a great way to make him immortal. To restore his immortality would be to do that, to do it through his letters. He was a big fan of ephebophilia. he was a big fan of teenage boys, and let that be known. He did not hide that fact at all. He worked it into a lot of his writing, and he wasn't a big fan of keeping his word, and he was a fantastic observer of the nitty-gritty, the details of the events of his day. That's what makes him invaluable, and that's what makes these letters so good. It's a little galling to me. It's another venue of complaint here for our Daily Penguin, is that we had two in an enormous volume of Cicero's letters to Atticus and 2 volumes of Cicero's letters to his friends, and this is all we have for Aretino, who's every bit as good a letter writer and who knew just as many famous people, if not more, per capita ratioed in his day than Cicero did, and yet this should be invaluable, and yet it's not done. And the same thing is true with Vespasiano. There was an author named Vespasiano who did a big Plutarch-like collection of short biographies of great Renaissance figures and minor Renaissance figures. And he's fantastic to read. He's a fantastic writer. Spirited, funny, always there with the literary anecdote, the literary allusion, and a treasure trove of historical information that we have nowhere else, that we don't know anywhere else than Vespasiano. There's never been a Penguin Classic edition of Vespasiano, as far as I know. I don't understand. I don't understand why some of the lesser lights of the Renaissance get treated this way by major reprint houses. But I'm glad that Penguin Once Upon a Time did this. Some of you have to tell me, or I briefly looked ahead of time whether or not Penguin ever did the dialogues. I don't think they ever did. So this is it. This is all you get, is the selected letters of Aretino. But I also wanted to finish this Your Daily Penguin with another recommendation. We were talking about the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. I finished off that video with a recommendation of Frank McGlynn's biography of Marcus Aurelius. And I get emails regularly from lots and lots of you. I leave my email in every video, so feel free to email me about anything at all, especially if you're cooped up at home and you just want somebody else to talk to. I am right here. I am cooped up at home, and I live online. So, except that I get lots of emails, right? I get lots and lots of emails. So if you email me at 8 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, your time rolls around and I still haven't responded, there is no point in you sending me a follow-up email saying, hello, I know you're there. I got your email. I just might not get to it immediately. And also, those of you who are in Eastern Standard Time here in America, keep in mind what I've been saying since the very beginning of this channel. After midnight, I turn into a pumpkin. I shut off everything and just read. So don't expect a response after midnight. Expect your response will come sometime the next day. But anyway, I got a lot of response from people saying they really liked that. that the Penguin Classic adjacent recommendation, and that maybe I should feel free to do that on any other video if one comes to mind, if one comes strongly to mind, and one comes strongly to mind for Aretino. It's an older book. This is the Old Time Life paperback of it, but you can find many copies, including this copy. I don't know that I would advise, if you're getting a used copy online, I don't think I would order a Time Inc. paperback because they are notorious for falling apart when you read them, but they were not made well. I've lost so many of these books to simple deterioration that could have been prevented if the publisher had used good paper, good binding, and they didn't. Now that's okay. That's perfectly fine. These fell into a lot of hands and got a lot of people reading. But there are also hardcovers, and I imagine other paperbacks involved. This is Ralph Roeder, and this is the man of the Renaissance. This is the old Time Inc. Trade paperback, which is, they have a very stiff cover, very poor binding. And this is a sort of a running narrative of the Renaissance and a collective biography of some of the people in it, most especially Machiavelli. But there's a long chunk devoted to Aretino in here, and it's very good. Ralph Roeder wrote this when he was... I don't imagine that any pictures of when he was a young man survive. I don't think there were that many pictures of him. He was a very young man at Harvard, and he was a cutie patootie. He was a definite sit up and notice cutie patootie. And then he left Harvard. I think he went to Columbia, I want to say, maybe. I'm not really sure where he went after that. But the main place I know that he went after that is Mexico. He rode with Pancho Villa and devoted his life. He just found his own place. Like we mentioned, he found the place after his own heart in Mexico City. And spent, I think, most of the rest of his life there. I think he barely came back to America at all. He wrote this book when he was still a comparatively young man. And it is, I mean, the section on Aretino is the reason why I'm waving it in front of your face, but it is fantastically good. Just fantastically good. So if you see this someday in a yard sale, or if you have it in your attic and you've never touched it because it looks boring, and believe you me, this looks like a Mardi Gras compared to the hardcover. The original hardcover of this was just a beige dust jacket with no illustrations whatsoever. You would never know, looking at that hardcover on like a table for a library book sale, some old battered hardcover with that faded and tattered beige dust jacket. Looking at it, you would never guess how great a reading experience this is. So I want to strongly recommend it. As long as we're in the Renaissance, I might as well, because this is a terrific book to read about the Renaissance, but also about our author. And I heard from plenty of people that a Penguin adjacent recommendation now and again would not bother them in the slightest. So I will continue to do that as long as anything recommends itself that I happen to have here that I can recommend to you. So that is your Daily Penguin. It's Pietro Aretino, who you would probably not have wanted in charge of your local all-boys soccer team, but who you might have wanted to correspond with. Certainly his correspondents enjoyed it until he published their letters without their permission, or all the things that he was wont to do. I wish that Penguin did more of him. I wish that they did his dialogues. Maybe they do, and I just don't know about it, but I could also stand a volume of his dramatic work. It doesn't age well, and you couldn't stage it. But it reads well, if that makes a difference. And a fully annotated version would be fascinating. So I wish that Penguin did more. But I'll take what I can get. So we are in the Renaissance, because Aretino knew everybody in the Renaissance. He knew popes, he knew Michelangelo, he knew... but I don't know if we'll be staying in the Renaissance. We'll see. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I will go over to the Penguin shelf tomorrow morning and make a quick decision. So, because if I ponder too much these book choices, I'm going to start to make a syllabus out of this, and I don't want to do that. This is not a class. This is a rambly, personal tour through my penguins. That is all it is. So I'm going to try to avoid overthinking it. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.